Gary Spicer, S. Gary Spicer, Sr. Everything. Everything athletics. You know, Ernie Harwell had a great way of connecting with people. People just felt like they knew the guy. I mean, it wasn't just some of his catchphrases where the ball would drift into the stands and he would say, somebody just picked that thing up from Walla Walla or Grand Blanc or Hamtramck. No, he connected with people beyond the medium of radio. It was almost like he was right there talking to you. And you know what? It was Ernie Harwell who connected me with Gary Spicer after his death. You see, when Ernie passed away, all the schools who had given Ernie honorary degrees got a check. And the check came to the president at the time, and the president called me and said, hey, I'd like you to send you a thank you to this Gary Spicer. He was the attorney and longtime confidant of Ernie Harwell. And I told him, yeah, I says, I don't really know Gary Spicer. I mean, he sent you the check. He's like, yeah, but Ernie's athletics, you're athletics, so send him a note. The president will tell you, I always do what I'm told. All right, 90%. Well, anyway, I wrote the note, but I included in there an idea that I had. I didn't know Gary like I know him now, or else I wouldn't have been so surprised. But almost when he immediately got the note, he called me. I said I had an idea that I wanted to run by him, a tribute to Ernie Harwell that combined the old Ebbets Field. He said to me, where are you? I said, I'm in the athletic department. He said, I'll be right over. That's Gary. And let me tell you some of the things that we've done since then. We started the Trammell Parish Camp, which has literally brought hundreds and hundreds of kids here to campus. Now, they've learned something about baseball, but more importantly, those young people and their parents got introduced to Wayne State. They may end up here someday as a student. Gary always likes to say to me, you know, Rob, I'm not worried about our kids graduating. Truth be told, I am. But I'm not worried about where they're graduating. I'm worried about where they're going to graduate school. And he has provided all kinds of support to allow that to happen. To countless student athletes who have now been able to go on to graduate school and complete their graduate degree. I said I wanted to do something for the kids who had a 4-point. We call it 4 points to perfection. And I think you heard earlier that we had 26 the previous semester. This semester, we had 32. Does that seem like a huge number? And you know what? I said to Gary, I'd like to do something special. And he arranged and paid for us to take all the kids to the Detroit Athletic Club to have lunch. And the kids loved it. In fact, this semester, I have kids coming up to me and saying, Mr. Fournier, if I get a 4-point, do I get to go to the DAC? Only if Gary takes you. It's kind of funny how incentives work, isn't it? As it was mentioned, we're building a new weight room. Coach Mendoza, who is still back there, wants $150,000 in new weight equipment. If you're missing Coach Mendoza, he wears a size 64 sport coat, by the way. Gary stepped up and provided the funding so we can get the equipment. He's been the chair of our capital campaign. Our capital campaign that had a goal of $7 million is now 92% of the way there, and we'll hit it. Because of Gary, we were able to secure the naming rights for the Doris J. and Donald L. Duchesne athletic facility. And that support is instrumental to the things we want to do. He has stepped up by lockers in the football and softball facility. He has been there for countless projects. And, as was mentioned by Governor O'Brien, last April, we opened up the Ernie Harwell facility, which drew national attention. $2.5 million raised, all private funds, nothing from the university. Thanks to Gary. He has started endowments for various sports so that whatever it looks like in the future, there'll be initial means of support there for coaches and administrators to make sure those programs last into the future with the kind of things they need. And I have to admit to you, a few months ago he came in and he presented me with a significant $6-amount check in which he started an endowment in my name and my wife's name for future athletic directors so they would have a means of support to do the kind of initiatives that need to be done throughout the year. Although Gary told me, he said, you know, Rob, if we're going to get this thing up to a couple million, you may want to put your wife's name first instead of yours. Smart guy. You know, when you have a Hall of Fame event, you recognize accomplishments from the past, and rightly so. But in Gary's case, we recognize not only activities from the past, but going forward. I know this whole celebration doesn't really fit in with the character of Gary. He's more modest than that. In fact, he believes in silent philanthropy. I believe in public acknowledgement. And those kind of support and initiatives that he's done has been instrumental in advancing the athletic department. Think about it. All the people that we recognize usually have some kind of an association with athletics in which something was gained. I mean, a scholarship, an administrator who gets paid. But Gary got none of that. No, his generosity came from the same thing you look for in that student athlete, from the heart. And that's made the difference for us. You know, there's very few people that have impacted the athletics department so much. He is one of the most consequential figures we've had in the past 100 years. And you know what? The things that he's done will actually allow us to connect with people in the future. Future coaches, student athletes, and administrators. Connecting with people. Ernie Harwell would appreciate that. Gary, stand up.
Mr. S. Gary Spicer, Sr., please come forward. S. Gary Spicer, Sr. earned his MBA from Wayne State University and will be inducted as a contributor into the Wayne State University Athletics Hall of Fame. A native of Lincoln Park, Michigan, he grew up a pretty good athlete himself. In fact, he was part of the three-guard combo at Lincoln Park, playing alongside future Wayne State Hall of Famer from the class of 1998, Mr. Fred Walcott. So Spicer, who has an extensive career as a legal counsel to professional athletes and entertainers, as well as corporate executives, has assisted WSU Athletics in many supportive ventures. He served as the chair of the WSU Athletics Capital Campaign, as well as serving as co-chair of the Ernie Harwell Field project, which opened in 2017. Mr. Spicer's strategic insight has impacted the physical landscape of the athletics campus well into the future. Since creating an association with Wayne State Athletics in 2010, he has been involved in nearly every facet of the program. Most notably, he co-founded the Allen Trammell Lance Parish Baseball Camp, fifth-year academic scholarships to promote graduation, graduate school scholarships to advance student-athlete enrollment in master's degree and law school, and general athletic support that has now exceeded $1 million. His direct involvement in the Ernie and Lulu Harwell Stadium project has brought national media attention to Wayne State University and offered opportunities for numerous youth and civic organizations. Governor O'Brien, President Wilson, Rob, it is my pleasure to present Mr. S. Gary Spicer, Sr. for induction into the Wayne State University Athletic Hall of Fame.
All of our Hall of Famers are pretty eloquent with their speech making, which is a whole nother talent that you don't see a lot of times this day, during this time period. Most important thing, and my comments will not be long, but it's really our time. It's our time at Wayne State to excel like we have never done before. We have a president and his lovely wife. The two of them are a team. Everywhere I go on this campus, it doesn't matter with whom they have been involved with, whether it's academics, whether it's the janitor. They have a good friendship with Chief Holt, which is a very smart thing for them to do. Tony's one of the best public safety people I have seen. But our president, his next really, he's done so much in a short time, but the only place where I have observed that he has a little difficulty is when they introduce the referees in basketball. The referees will walk by and they'll see the president and his wife, and they'll smile, but they also quiver a little bit. I think they're frightened of him. He's a pretty serious fan. What he does for football and for baseball, basketball, he also has the same affection for all of the other sports. When he and Governor O'Brien, the best thing that we ever did, Alan Trammell and Lance Parrish, when we first started our camp, this will be our 9th year. We've had over thousands of children and adults come through. Coach Kelly, Rob, Tram, Lance, and I sat down and put this camp together, and it is second to none. One of the smartest things that we did was a young little boy, a nice little kid, came up, and we treated him well, and it was the son of now Chairman of the Board of Governors, Mrs. O'Brien, behind us. So we have, but this is the first time I have watched the boards of regents, the board of governors of universities. We run 9 foundations from clients that have been successful over many, many years. And what we have here is a team. It's the best president, his wife, the best board of governors, their spouses. They're not nearly as contentious as groups that we've had before. You look at Michigan State. I taught at the law school of Michigan State, the sports entertainment law. I've watched that school go downhill with the coverage of all the things that had happened, unfortunately. We do not have that. I've watched University of Michigan with all of their problems with their finance committees and their people who are investing their proceeds. I mean, we really are scandalous. And it's because of the caliber of talent that we have, and this every person that I'm going to talk about, from the president to the board of governors. I'm going to save my comments for Rob for last. I have to ask Pam a couple questions up here too while we're speaking. But the next layer, our coaches, take a look at the comments that their players have made. They build character. They build discipline. We have a student-athlete syndrome going on that is really second to none. 83% of our students are graduating. That means for every 830 freshmen, every 1,000 freshmen that start, 830 of them will graduate. We're in the same boat with Duke, Stanford, schools that are off the chart. We are right in there with them. So many of my friends, my MBA was, all of us worked in the auto plants. I worked for General Motors Truck and Coach in Pontiac and drove down here at night. All of us had tuition refund. All we had to do was to get a good grade, and it was paid for by our corporations. And when I look back at, we had discipline. I came from the wrong side of the tracks. We lived in Detroit. The 5 most important people to me, a couple of sentences of each. The first 2 were 5th grade teachers, a phys ed teacher and a social studies teacher, who told me that I had a great deal of natural athletic ability, use it wisely. It was like tattooed on my forehead. And a social studies teacher that said that I could be the next George Kell. That was the first time I'd ever been recognized by any teacher in school that I can recall. That was my first one. We lived on Vernon Highway in Livernois. Everybody came up here from the south. We all worked my father worked in the auto plant. They carried him out in 1965 after 43 years. My uncles all worked there. I thought Fords was plural until I was 16 years old. But the grit that we had, which is what some of our athletes have referred to, I have never worried about losing. I've always just concentrated how long does it take to win. And that is because my family, where they came from, they were farmers. And they made $1 a day from sunup to sundown. No one ever, I think my mother saw one game, and my father never saw me play. They were divorced when I was 9, and many of the student athletes that are in this room come from divorced families, single-parent families, or whatever. It gives you another level of endurance. But when I had gone to junior high school, Jeff Smith, I played basketball, baseball, 1 season of football. Coach Winters, that was enough for me to stay with baseball and basketball. I weighed about 102 pounds. But Jeff Smith, you could always tell our teams from Herbert Hoover Junior High because we handled the ball right-handed, left-handed. We could dribble with both hands. In the 7th grade, or we couldn't play. So our team was good. And at the same time in Lincoln Park, we had 3,000 students. And of the 3,000 students, we had 58 students out, or players, for the baseball team. But before I'd gotten there, my last game, basketball, at Herbert Hoover Junior High, we graduated in January everywhere. That was a crazy thing, but they had 2 different graduation classes. So at halftime, we had a Catholic school across the street, Christ the Good Shepherd. They had the most beautiful girls that you have ever seen in your entire life. Sharon Green and Annette Bazzo, Roy Bassett and I were smitten, really first girlfriends. But these 2 gals were lovely. Well, they came to our game, and they had walked in the door just as the tip-off for the second half. The ball came to Roy Bassett, my best friend. I broke for the basket. He threw the ball literally from here to the exit sign. I scored the basket. Our coach looked at us like we had lost our mind. We scored for the wrong team. So every time that I would see him when he was alive, he would remind me, do you remember what you and Roy Bassett did? But our high school teams, we hit a high school with such a large group, mostly blue-collar people that had moved from Detroit. And we had the good fortune of having 4 feeder schools with really good athletes in each junior high school. So when we landed at Lincoln Park, we had a terrible, terrible basketball team. I don't think, maybe they'd won 2 or 3 games. They ended up with 2 new coaches, Tom Nolan and Joe Brody. Both of them ended up in the Hall of Fame, wonderful careers. Tom Nolan was a little different. Our first practice, he said, if anyone's parents call me, you're off the team. So we didn't have any problems with parents and coaches. And we played for Mike Adry's first team. He sponsored us, and at times Hearst baseball was really big in Detroit. And in my senior year, we won the Huron Rouge, and we played in a Times Hearst, and we played against Willie Horton, Bill Freehan, and Carmen Fanzone. And one of the people that signed was a teammate of mine, Fred Walcott. And Fred Walcott and I and Ed Donaldson, Freddie was inducted in the Hall of Fame at Wayne State a number of years ago. But I can't tell you how special it is to stand up here. He's had MS for the last 15 years. And I saw him at an event here a long time ago. But There's something about teammates that all of our Hall of Famers are referring to. When you play on a good team, I don't care if you never see them for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. All you have to do is be near them, and nostalgically everything, comes back. I've been blessed with clients who, 4 generations, I'll give you an example of 2. The Nicolay family, Mr. Nicolay came here from Kansas. His great-great-great uncle was Abraham Lincoln's chief of staff, John Nicolay. He and a partner of his were riding on a streetcar to the Dodge main plant, saw a little fellow with a potato chip machine, saw that it was for sale, purchased it, turned it into the New Era Potato Chip Company. We merged the New Era Potato Chip Company, stock for stock, with Frito-Lay. We merged Frito-Lay, stock for stock, tax-free, with Pepsi-Cola. I had spent 12 years on the board of trustees at Adrian College, where I'd gone to undergrad. And Mr. Nicolay and I were at a function, and he asked me if I would take over their legal affairs, which I did. 28 trusts, 3 foundations, and 2 CRUTs later, when the last of the 3 children, when Don Duchesne passed away 3 years ago, when Joanne passed away 5 years ago, we have been able to we built Adrian College's baseball field, $1.8 million, paid for it, and then they have won 9 straight MIAA championships. When I played there, we played on the municipal field and had to run kids off the field to play. But sports, the Duchesne Foundation is largely responsible for many of the wonderful things that we've been able to do with Wayne. But we couldn't do it without the leadership and talent of somebody like Rob. The first time I met him, we talked about Ernie Harwell. I had represented him for 30 years. When he passed away. His widow, I happen to be her guardian and conservator. She'll be 99 in about 2 months. But Ernie, one of the reasons why I was so responsive to Rob, and I didn't know him at the time, but we came up with this concept, and we're going to be able, with his leadership and with what the administration was able to do, we have constructed something. If you haven't seen it, I think it's going to be open today. But it is phase 1 of a facilities development that is second to none. Now, last 2 years, the Board of Governors, the President, they put a 2.4 line item in our budget. We have more people now that are Wayne State graduates, Wayne State folks that have never been involved in the school in their lifetime. They're calling us. They've been down here, they've seen what we are doing. We're going to take every single sport, and we're going to try to have a little mini endowment created for each one of them. What Rob has been able to do with the facilities is second to none, but more importantly, he has in his heart, all of us, our team, we have one real objective, and that is to have the best program and give the most support to every student athlete that we have in this complex. Our students are, I would put these 5 Hall of Fame recipients up against any 5 students that any university would want to talk about. We have an entire 450 athletes that are out there. Every single one of them is treated individually, and I will guarantee if anything happened that was improper, like Dr. Nassar and all the problems at Michigan State, all you would have to do would be to talk to Rob for 30 seconds. There would be an investigation in 12 minutes. 12 hours, it would be ready to be closed. He and I learned something as lawyers. It took Rob? It took us 5 years to figure out that if we had a 5th-year student who was redshirted and was completing their 4th year of eligibility, and they had already satisfied their undergraduate requirements, we could give them a scholarship to go to grad school. So we have increased the number of immediate grad students in a significant way, and we are just starting. We're going to have to get another foundation to pay for our lunches because we've gone from 24 four-pointers to 32 four-pointers, and some are asking if dinner is included in what's coming down the road. But when you have someone that is as sincere and as competent, the only negative about Rob that I can think of is that he tells some of the most horrible jokes that I've asked Pam if she could help him with some new material for his jokes, and then also to let us know what the punchline is, because sometimes we can't figure it out. But what he's done and what we're going to do with the leadership that we have in place, we have reached individuals that see the program and see what is being done here and the caliber. Our career services are going to expand more. We're looking at the whole student debt. That entire, when you look at more student debt than credit card debt, there has to be something to be done to change that. So the more scholarships, partial scholarships we can give to our students, the less student debt, and it all points them in the right direction. The last thing I want to say is that from a career standpoint, I'll give you 2 or 3 examples of what happened to me that gave me an opportunity to jump out there as a lawyer. I had I had worked at General Motors, at Trust Department, at National Bank, and Price Waterhouse before I started practicing law. And a fellow that I had played baseball against, and at times his father was a former IRS lawyer, tax lawyer. He had a heart attack, and he asked me to come join him. And he had convinced the up-and-coming General Motors graduates that he had a special relationship with the IRS agents that would help them. So we represented, at 27 years of age, the president of General Motors, 7 of the executives of the executive committee. At that time, they all belonged to Kirk of the Hills. They all were in the same investments. It was a homogeneous group. And we were terrified in working with them, but I thought if we could work with some people like that, we could work with anyone, so it had given a level of confidence that might not have had before. In the trust department, we learned how to do the tax planning. The Nicolay family, the Duchesne family, half of what we are now able to give in foundations, it came from income and estate tax savings. So we are at a point where we are just starting. I want you to come back every year, and I want you to come back in 5 years. You will not recognize this complex. And we appreciate everyone that's here. Our children, my wife passed away a number of years ago, and we had 6 children, 4 of whom became Marines. Don't ask me how that happened, but 2 of them played, one for Florida soccer, women's soccer, at Florida State and Mercer, and all of them were, 5 of the 6 were all-state hockey and soccer players. I played baseball, basketball, which tells you the way it works, I think, for parents. But 4 of them spent 21 years in the Middle East, in Iraq and Afghanistan. 2 snipers, 1 tank commander, and my daughter was a major in the Marine Corps. And when I look at the discipline and the experiences that all of them had gotten from a leadership standpoint that had traced back to athletics, there isn't anything that you can do that is more important than to supplement your academic experience with your athletic, your teams, and the good physical condition that you're in. We have discipline, and you all have leadership. And when you come back here 5 years from now with this team, it'll be unbelievable what you're going to see. Thank you.